Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. I truly believe that sometimes a single insight can completely change your business directions and allow you to achieve your business goals. In this episode, I interview Jussi Luukkonen from New Zealand. He's a keynote speaker, he's a thought leader, and he's a leadership coach, and he's also an author of a new book, Digital Campfire. Now, we had a discussion around many different challenges that business leaders are up against with the recent disruption in the market, and we talked about many different areas where what can business leader do to get over some of these challenges. But I think you're really gonna enjoy my discussion with Jussi when we talk about his book, Digital Campfire. There's so much distractions in the market for leadership, teams on a daily basis. There's so much information, so much happening when you come to digital media or simply come to social media or electronic content that leadership come across or the teams coming across. And how do you navigate some of those, so many distractions in a daily basis. And also, how do you teach your team to learn and how to help and how to leverage that information out there for you to get ahead in a business? So you can build your process, build your policies, build your strategy for your business to scale. So if you like this content, don't forget to send us your feedback. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is someone very special from New Zealand, Jussi Luukkonen. I got the right pronunciation, Jussi?
Close enough.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. Hey, the topic today we're talking about leadership and the impact on the businesses. A lot of leaders I know, they're going through a lot of struggles. They're trying to make a lot of decisions. They need to navigate this disruption, and they need to make a lot of decisions. And I think our discussion is going to help them a lot in many different topics. So I'm looking forward to our discussion, looking forward to learning from you. Thank you so much for your time and especially making the time for us on a long weekend.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting, and I've always been a fan of Canada, so it's a privilege for me to be here in the Canadian side of the things.
Likewise, thank you. So if you walk us through, what do you see that biggest challenges for business leaders, for last disruption for a couple of years? Where do you think the leaders are up against? What do they need to navigate, and what do you think the challenges they're dealing with?
Well, it's not about the change. The change is never the challenge because change is happening all the time. So if we look our fingernails, they are growing all the time. And in the tip of your fingernail, the material is kind of dead. And then, close to your finger, it's very alive, material. So where does the change occur when the nail becomes, kind of dead, and so these existential matters, they are always there. So the change has been forever there. That's not the change, but our attitude, how we deal with the change, do we think that change is a problem or an enabler? And I think now during the last couple of years, when we have had the pandemic, leadership has realized that, okay, the old attitude didn't work anymore. We had to find something else, but there was this huge vacuum because leadership has been traditionally trying to find solutions from external sources, whether they are new processes, structures, all those things. And suddenly there has been this vacuum within the leadership where they don't accept that they are human beings and as lost as everybody else in front of these seismic shifts in the society, in the nature, politics, economics. Those seismic shifts has been accelerating at the moment. And I think leaders, if they are honest with themselves, they are a bit lost and there's this huge vacuum. And now it's time to fill that vacuum, something that will build trust and prosperity for all and not just for few.
So change the attitude. You mentioned that the attitude is biggest challenge. So what's stopping us changing that? Is there so many? Is it too big a change, or what are we up against? Is it a lot of skills leaders have to pick up in order to change their attitude? Or where is a little bit they've been held back?
I think the biggest thing that is holding us back, whether we are leaders or not, is our false assumptions.
Okay.
We are not very good at challenging our assumptions about ourselves, about the world, about each other.
Mm-hmm.
We try to avoid confrontation, or we try to win the wars, but we never try to understand what is driving us towards the conflict and not towards the resolution. Yeah. So that's interesting dynamics that is going on. And those false assumptions that I mentioned, they usually are those outdated policies, processes, or just outdated views of the world. Mm-hmm. We think that it's like Victorian English values don't hold water anymore because world is has changed and it's more diverse and things like that. So if we think that marriage is only for women and men, that's an assumption that might have had some constructive value 200 years ago, but it's not anymore the reality. And if we don't see the reality, but we use our assumptions, whether it was assumptions about the business or the society in general, if we hold on those old, untested assumptions, we are making consistently wrong decisions.
I see. So how does somebody goes about it? Some of the assumptions, you mentioned that, it could be in a business process, that business policies. So how does business leaders go about it? How they handle it? How they start looking for a new perspective, and maybe they need to, tweak some of these, assumptions that are making, or maybe have to change some of these policies. I guess, one of the things COVID challenged us, and we used to work from office a lot, right? So it simply said, listen, that norm, the working from office, is just not feasible anymore. You have to figure out new ways of working, new ways of, measuring a lot of productivity and all that stuff. So what are some of those assumptions that business leaders need, and how do they go about it, change those assumptions?
Well, one big assumption is that C-level leaders know it all. They don't. They make decisions, but quite often, if they make the decision based on the idea that they have some superior wisdom, that's not the case anymore. One of my kind of heroes, if you like, is Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, and prolific writer and business philosopher, if you like. Ray Dalio has been propagating radical transparency and radical openness. And the processes and tools and methods he implemented first in Bridgewater, they have been groundbreaking. And by radical transparency and radical openness, he has managed to create a culture within that company that actually made it as a perpetuum mobile, money-making machine that no other hedge fund have ever seen before. And how they navigated through the previous financial crisis was just phenomenal. And Ray Dalio has been writing in his book, The Principles, a lot about these assumptions and how to avoid them by building a set of principles. And those principles should not be based on false assumptions, but radical transparency and radical openness, where you gather information and you keep your eyes and ears open, and you challenge your own thinking, and you are not on defense all the time when somebody doesn't agree with you, but you need to ask, okay, is my assumption now right? Does it always hold water? Is there something that I haven't seen? And quite often, what I have seen in senior leadership, there is a huge lack of curiosity. Yeah. They are curious about market and about those external things, but they are not curious about their own thinking and challenging their own ways of thinking and learning new mental tools. And those managers, those leaders who do that usually are those shining examples of transformative leadership, but they are minority at the moment.
Oh. So you mentioned one of the items that it's very interesting that you mentioned leaders don't have all the information. The people have information, they make decisions. So in a disconnected world where we are right now, we're not working from the same office, everybody in a decentralized locations wherever they're working. How do they tap into this information? How do they still make sure that the information they're getting to make a decision is still the genuine one? They get all the right information before they make a decision. Is that challenge during this last couple of years?
Yeah, and I think that we've been seeing a lot of discussion about data-driven decision-making, how data becomes the driver. But we have also seen how misinformation becomes a driver. We've seen in politics how misinformation has been created on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen also in marketing how, for example, giants like Google and Facebook, they've been manipulating actually billions of people based on clever algorithms, and it is a bit spooky thing to think that we are disconnected, and at the same time we are so closely knit with all these data sources that we can't really challenge. And I think that the remedy to that is that leaders need to become more human. When artificial intelligence and machine learning leaps forward, at the same time we need to have similar leap in humanistic growth of leaders. And that goes back to the neuroscience and the findings of those people who have been working in neuroscience, trying to find a way to kind of validate what is happening and why it is happening, and finding tools that match to the technological progress that is taking place before the technology kind of eats us alive. Because if we externalize everything to the technology, or if we leave technology to the technological decision making to the hardcore tech guys, then we lose our way. And neuroscience has been able to, for example, show that if a leader creates a culture of trust, it will bring better information to the game. When people are trusted, they will naturally gravitate towards better decision making, and they are less likely to use malice or nasty ways of communicating, or using rumors or Chinese whispers or any of that kind of to back up their work. So it's interesting challenge, or not the challenge, but it is an interesting vacuum to fill. I think I think it is Brené Brown who's been talking more about shame and vulnerability and things like that. And the more our leaders show their human side and grow as humans, the better we can then use also technology. And I have penned a term called digital campfires, which means that technologies, they are like logs. We throw those logs into the fire of communication, and they are just logs. But the more important thing than those logs that burn are those people that are gathered around that campfire and share their stories. And we are moving towards business cultures where stories are more important than methods, tools, or processes, because those stories, they glue everything together. And if we look about, for example, the way all the world religions have evolved over thousands of years, Jesus didn't have not a single PowerPoint slide. Nor did Allah came down from heavens giving, PowerPoint presentations. Buddha didn't do that either. They went to meet people. Like in India, when 3,000 or so years ago, Shakyamuni Buddha, or the prince of Sakya clan, when he started to teach his teachings, he was just traveling, walking
Yeah.
around,
Just on a
telling
foot.
stories.
Just on a foot. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we now the digital campfires give us the opportunity for the first time in the history of humankind globally share our stories in real time, like we are doing now. You are in Canada, I'm in New Zealand. We have some 17,000 kilometers between us,
Yeah.
but we share the same moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key, to understand that we need to lit those digital campfires, bring people together using technology and not being slave of that technology and kind of intimidated by it or be afraid of it. It's just a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's a very interesting point, you see, and I see that on a daily basis. Yeah, I think there's two layers to this. First, you got to understand technology. Once you understand, then you can use it the way you mentioned, and then you can focus more on a people and stories and human side of things. But if you don't understand technology, you cannot get to the second step because you're just so intimidated by it, and you're going to keep the distance. And I think a lot of business leaders I see that and I meet on a daily basis, they are hesitant about understanding the first step, where they don't want to spend time, or they get intimidated, or technology is not for me, and they will either find somebody in a company, okay, I'm gonna dedicate everything for this person, I'm gonna design a role for this person is gonna drive my technology, either CTO or a director. I'm gonna stay out of it because I don't understand this, right? So if you don't understand as a leader, how do you get to the second step where you can use it effectively and focus on a human side and stories? Where you see that, because I see that a lot of struggle there, and I, my always goal is to simplify for people to understand, but I see a lot of struggle for that, especially, little bit senior, business leaders who've been around, in a business for a long time. They're so intimidated by it. They don't need to be expert in technology, but do you think this day and age, they have an option to stay away from technology, not to get involved?
Every leader in this current world needs to understand technology. They can't step away from it. They can't delegate technology because technology is part of their life, and they can't. It's impossible to even think about leadership without digital literacy. And that means that if you take a leadership position, one core competency of that person needs to be digital literacy. They need to understand deeper the technological frameworks and methods and tools than their employees maybe even, because they make the crucial decisions that affect so many lives. So they need to be curious, they need to understand deeper. And one thing that I have been worried about is that while they have kind of delegating these technologies to chief information officers or whoever, they have also delegated the cultural aspects of the transformation to HR or whoever, people, chief people officers or culture people. And then they think that if they delegate the culture, the stories, the glue that holds society together, and they delegate the technology away, then they could, make some decisions. They don't make any informed decisions by externalizing things. They are just, they will become victims of their own greed, anger, and ignorance. That will lead to a big problem.
I see a lot of many times, business leaders will hire somebody very junior in a skill set in a technology, and over the time they promote that, definitely that the person gets a higher portfolio, and finally they dedicate everything in a company around technology to this person, and then you struggle, that the mindset is not there, but even though that technical skill set got upgraded with the person over the time, but the mindset is still the same. You're still dealing with the same mindset. Unless you change that, you're still not gonna, make any headways with the culture and stories what we were just talking about, and make an impact on a business. Especially technology these days is a big part of that. That impacts the revenue these days. We all trying to generate revenue, and the technology is a tools and vehicle to help you generate the revenue. Where you see that, do you see that challenge as well? That without a technology, we're struggling with the revenue side.
Well, I think that we see exponential growth in revenues within those companies who implement first the emerging technologies, or be there as pioneers. But I feel that when the exponential growth hits the some sort of ceiling and starts to plateau, then comes a situation where actually those companies who have been building long-term sustainable way of running their business, they will then go through that ceiling and show in the long run that they are the ones who really are profitable, and with technology you get these spikes, and then it drops down, and it goes like this. But the companies that have strong culture, they go more steadily upwards. And there is a fantastic book by Nonaka and Takeuchi called The Wise Company. And Nonaka and Takeuchi, they are the founders of knowledge management. During 90s, you know, their work was essential in a way. Corporates started to manage their information, their data. Knowledge management became a term. And then Nonaka and Takeuchi, a couple of years ago, they published this new book, The Wise Company. And they did a lot of research of, especially in Japanese companies who have been managing to keep up with the innovation all the time. They've been innovating and innovating and innovating, and kind of reinventing themselves without losing the core, the essence of the company. And it is fascinating to read in their book how they align business leadership and culture with philosophies and development of philosophies throughout the 3,000 or so years. And the thing that came to my mind from there is the name of the book is The Wise Company, which means that leadership should develop wisdom instead of just knowledge and information. They need to be wise in the way they use that knowledge. And it then goes back to the old Buddhist concept of what are the properties of a Buddha, and they are compassion, wisdom, and courage. So business leaders need to be modern time Buddhas. They need to be enlightened, not deluded. And when you are deluded, you base your actions on false assumptions. When you are enlightened, you see the world as it is, and you have compassion to help others. You have wisdom to know how to help others, and you have courage to make even sometimes difficult decisions. And those compassion, wisdom, and courage, they in my world, they are the three things that every leader needs to nourish. And it becomes almost like a spiritual endeavor. It becomes like a soul-searching thing, regardless of your religious background or upbringing. You need to fill the spiritual vacuum that is in leadership at the moment. And the leadership, the spiritual vacuum doesn't mean a religious vacuum. It means that you need to understand yourself. You need to know what is your calling. You need to know what is your mission in life. Not just, you know, mission statement of your company, but why do you exist? Why do you do the work you do? What is the main driver? What is kind of your motivation to do everything? What makes you wake up in the morning and go to the work? And these things, when I've been talking with leaders, they are almost scared to talk about these things.
Because a lot of work on it's a calling, a lot of work on yourself.
Yes.
You know, it's I mean, we have to work on ourselves. We have to understand it's a lot of hard work that you may have to change your mindset. You may have to change the way you think, the way you perceive, the way you go. So there's a lot of changing happens in a person. So Is it the work they're afraid of putting out, or is it simply that the change is what they're afraid of, that this may change me in a different way that I'm not expecting it to? So what do you think that block stopping them to take on this work?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. First, quite often it's very lonely job to be a leader, especially if you are a CEO of a large company. It's a lonely job because you have to make decisions that affect so many other people. So quite often that loneliness leads to a point where there's a danger to become a bit arrogant and self-sufficient and not helping, not seeking for help, not asking for help. And then it leads to a kind of this vicious cycle where you don't seek for help, you are not you are afraid of being curious about yourself, you drill deeper and deeper in the darkness of your rabbit hole. And when I look at the leadership paradigm at the moment, only those leaders who have shown vulnerability and shown that they also are humans, they kind of do well. If you look at Tim Cook at Apple, the first openly gay CEO of Fortune 500 companies, the fact is not that the thing is not that Tim Cook is gay, but the thing is that he saw inequality and all those problems within the society and didn't run away from them. He was sensitive and he was in touch with people's lives. And that kind of leadership, then people gravitate towards that kind of leadership. I haven't seen that kind of vulnerability in many leaders. And I admire Tim Cook's approach because I think that it wasn't easy to make yourself so vulnerable, but he has still been able to keep his privacy. So it quite often these leaders, they are afraid of losing their face and being exposed, maybe being even imposters in some cases. But that's the only way for a true leader to ask for help, to show their vulnerability, to be curious and to be open and transparent.
Well, I think that one of the fear people have is if they're being vulnerable, they get attacked many different directions, right? So you also got to have a strength to defend yourself or fight back if you get attacked, right? So being vulnerable is one thing, but other side is being strong and able to deal with all the attacks come your way.
Well, look what is happening in a global scale now. Putin is killing with his army people in Ukraine. And, he's been isolated. He's getting more and more isolated every minute. And he portrayed this strong leader. And in him, we can see what happens to strong leaders. They will be isolated. They will suffer alone a horrible end. And every leader who thinks that they are some sort of omnipotent beings that carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, they should re-examine themselves and maybe ask for help.
Yeah.
Because I just recently saw this brilliant movie trilogy, Godfather. And it is a perfect, almost surgical examination of leadership. What happens to Michael Corleone during those 3 movies, how he from war hero in the murderer and then leader of the biggest crime family, and then, you know, accoladed by the Vatican, the Pope and everything. And in the end, the last scene, he's sitting totally isolated, alone in Sicily.
Yeah.
And he has lost everything. And leaders should watch Godfather and think, do I want to be that person who in the end will lose everything? Yeah. Is it worth of it? Is the power that I'm so hungry for, is that, you know, is the price that I need to pay for that power worth of it?
Yeah, very interesting. Wow, great insights, Jussi. And another, let's talk about your white papers. I've downloaded 2 of your white papers.
Thank you.
For leaders to change this perception, one of the things always is a coaching. You know, coaching is always, you know, I'm running a business, I'm building a company. I get so many blind spots I can't see. That's where the coaches come in. You know, they're definitely here. Listen, you know, you when you're in a business, you're so involved in the decisions, you cannot see everything. But coaches come in, they come in very handy. You know, they help you see what you can see, and they help you to get to the next step, and you go from there. In your paper, you mentioned that coaching seems to be changing quite a bit, that the way we coached it before, what people are expecting, it's that landscape is changing. If you walk us through, what do you mean by that? You know, what's changing in a coaching environment and a training environment, and how people receive training before and what they're expecting now? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in traditional competence development, for example, companies put training in place to train people new skills.
Okay.
And coaches were there quite often to kind of help leaders to externalize things.
Okay.
And you know, deal with things. I hate the word deal with. So it indicates that you have a problem somewhere. I need to deal with these people. It's like people have a problem, and the leaders should think, when I'm dealing with these people, are these people the problem or my attitude? And the coaches need to be, the landscape needs to change from this kind of ego stroking, you know, coaching in the more challenging coaching, where coach is more like, in the sports field, coach still is the person who gives you these gritty goals and gives you, you know, the new goal after you have reached the one. Whereas in traditional coaching, it's like you talk to a priest and they say, Hail Mary, and your sins are forgiven.
Yeah.
And that's the traditional coaching. You know, the leader can, oh yeah, it was so good to talk with you, and now I see things a bit better and bloody, whatever it is. What leaders really need are coaches that challenge them big time. And that's the big change, because that requires vulnerability, and the leaders need to seek for coaches that can challenge them and not just stroke them and, you know, be nice with them. That's you know, you will never be a you know, world-winning sport champion if you don't challenge yourself, and if your coach is not really pointing out those things that you need to fix in your performance. And at the same time, the new coaching paradigm requires more focusing on this, like I said, spiritual, or whatever we call it, vacuum, which means that your personal growth and personality matters. You need to learn new things about yourself. And the coach there needs to be a person who can then open those doors in your life that otherwise would be shut. It's not therapeutic, but it is more about identifying those blind spots we all have and helping us to you know, see those blind spots and make them a source of energy, and not kind of paralyze ourselves with fear.
Mhm. So coaches can help leaders, but does leaders have to do the same thing for their teams as well?
Absolutely.
Do they have to transfer the same kind of mindset or same kind of what they learn from coaches and translate? So how do they do that, and how big is the challenge that they have to go and do the same thing to the team, but coaches have told them?
Yeah. So it's funny because leader is a coach
Mm-hmm.
always, because leader is a person who has a vision and a goal clear in his or her mind, and can communicate that goal and vision to other people, and take them to a journey and help people over time to build capability to go towards that journey. But quite often it's unconscious. Leaders are coaching unconsciously. They give examples of what it is to do the work to go towards this goal that has been agreed. And then if it's unconscious, their behavior becomes the coach. So they need to be very careful, like David L. Marquis, the guy who wrote the book Leadership is Language. He could really clearly identify how the language that leaders are using can create huge damage or huge progress. And in his book Leadership is Language, he is using this case study of the cargo ship that sank in the Caribbean Sea near Cuba in tropical storm, and where dozens of sailors drowned. And they were able to save the black box of that ship, cargo ship. And by transcribing those discussions on the deck, what kind of language the captain was using, Marquis was able to clearly show that actually it was the language and the example of the captain that sank the ship. Wow. And killed those people.
Wow.
And coaching comes in language exercise. And quite often leaders don't realize how much weight their language carries. And if they don't understand that, it becomes unconscious thing. And it starts to direct the culture of the company. And when that happens, suddenly these ripple effects go through the company, and the end is near. So I suggest that all leaders, all coaches, they go and read Leadership is Language, because it gives a very practical method and tool to understand what is the new paradigm of coaching. How do we use language and our own behavior as a tool for coaching, and how to make it conscious and surface those false assumptions and biases. But it boils down to language.
But the language you see, isn't it that reflection of your thoughts? If your thoughts are very clear, and your language is going to get clear as well, right? So if your thoughts not clear, you're not going to have a language. So isn't it start internally that you have the right thoughts, that what you were doing, and that's where the language came across was not clear?
Well, Adolf Hitler's thoughts were very clear.
Got you.
He was very clear. The enemy is the Jewish population. And it was the enemy was Jewish industries and business people and normal Jewish folk. It was very clear. He was very clear in his thinking, and his language was very clear. And Joseph Goebbels, his propaganda minister, was very, very articulate and clever in the way they were using language, first radio, then movies, to spread the word.
Okay.
And in recent history, Vladimir Putin in Russia, his thinking is very clear. He believes what he says. The problem is that what are those things these leaders believe in?
It's a belief system, not the thought process, I guess.
Yes. And that's a danger, because we can, I've been watching with great interest what Elon Musk is doing with Tesla and his rocket companies and everything, and the language he is using and the belief systems he has, because he is using huge levers. Same as like Donald Trump had his moment as a president, and he managed to create an unbelievable use of language in the United States and globally. And then technologies amplified all those things. And then it boils down to belief systems. And if we think that we can get away with murder, we should think twice, because I think in all societies we have realized that there is this law of cause and effect. If you do something, there's always an effect, and you can't escape it. It can take time before the effect comes in reality, but it will come. And in my thinking, more and more, and the older I get, I think more about the basic, simple thing that if we think that life is the most precious thing on earth, that should be our core belief. We should protect life in its all forms. And then it starts to ripple out, the language thing. How do we protect life? How do we respect life? How do we talk about life? How do we then evolve our thinking so that the belief system, that the simple thing that the life is the most precious thing, if that becomes our belief, the core of our belief system, that's like an anchor where we can then look our thinking. And our coaching needs to be based on that respect of life and individuality. And then Ray Dalio is talking a lot about tough love. It means that you don't let leaders get away with murder. You need to challenge them.
Wow, very interesting. So how does this augmented facilitation comes in? Is that you provide different way of that coaching? And that's just extension of the way you provide coaching, I take it, right?
Augmented facilitation, which is a kind of model I created for myself to communicate these things, is based on the fact that when you facilitate, you are working with people, but you need to use those digital Campfire logs technologies and put them together. And normal facilitation process, quite often it is in its most simplest form, is team building exercise. We go somewhere and we do some nice things and we get to know each other, and it's fun and enjoyable. And it might lead to better team performance on a short period. The next level of facilitation is then when you have professional facilitators who then run you through their ways of building a session, and quite often leaders give some goals, or we need to have this strategy session. Now we need to get the strategy ironed out, and we need to agree about the next steps, whatever it is. And quite often that layer of traditional facilitation is then interpretation of the group. So the facilitator quite often then writes a report and interprets, what was going on inside the group, and so on and so forth. And I add that augmented facilitation layer there, because in augmented facilitation, you are not only interpreting things, or you are not only building team dynamics, but you are also gathering data from that group. So you get information and data from that group which means that then the results are stickier. You can refer back to those findings from the workshop because you have collected the data from the people. And good example, I run a workshop with one leadership, actually not only the leadership team, there were close to 30 people from different stakeholder groups.
Yeah.
And if I had run it as a normal facilitated workshop, I would have got my interpretation, and I gajillion of yellow stickers that I need to transcribe and then put together and report back to the CEO. Yeah. But because we were using a software to gather all that information, less than 4-hour workshop produced about 64 pages of very valuable information from the participants. And the beauty of augmented facilitation methodologies is that you then also encourage and get those people who are introverted or for some reason don't want to be always talking or in the middle of action. You will get also those people to respond. And the technologies are there now to allow us to use augmented facilitation methodologies and really get data out from the workshops. And then reuse that data and use that data to inform further decision-making processes. So augmented facilitation is a method to use digital tools to amplify the human interaction within the workshop.
So what kind of data are we gathering? What information we collecting? Is it on a process? Is it on their behavior? Is it their approach in a discussion? What can or is it all included that when we collect the data?
It depends on the goal of the workshop. In augmented facilitation method, you create a framework and you design the workshop so that you know what kind of data and information you gather from the people. For example, good way of if you have, for example, large group of people, you can use all kinds of voting mechanisms, and you then get numeric values against things that people, for example, put forward to the rest of the group. So you get votings, averages. You can also then start to ask people's personal views, and then you can rate those views. So there are many ways of looking at things. There are a lot of tools that can do that. Mural, Miro, and to facilitate, to name 3 of those tools. But as a facilitator, it creates a challenge for yourself because you need to design the workshop differently, because you need to design the workshop in such a way that you know what type of information and data you want to capture from the workshop. So in augmented facilitation, the trick for the facilitator is really design the structure of data and information you want to extract from the group so that you can run the workshop in such a way that they are able to produce the right kind of information so that you can then use that as a database and analyze the outcomes.
Very interesting, very interesting. So business leaders, you see, we had a couple of years of just working from home, or I don't know how long you guys worked from home. In Ontario, we had a longest lockdown, compared to all over North America. I think we had a very long lockdown. Finally, we're getting out. So business leaders, they definitely have to do a lot of work on themselves. They have to, do all the items we talk about it, and they have to focus on themselves. And same time, they got to push for those company growths. They have to figure out. A lot of companies had to innovate new products. A lot of companies have to innovate new services during this time. So they have that work cut out for them as well to move the companies forward. Same time, grow, invest time on themselves as well. What do you recommend? How do they go about it? How do they find a balance, or how do they, stay focused on those all of those items and move the companies forward?
Well, I think going back to being humans. So I think the time now for leaders is also to use these digital campfires, technologies to connect with like-minded leaders and connect with the coaches. Actually, this is a huge opportunity, because when I've been coaching people over Zoom, somehow it is more intimate and open than when you go and meet people in the cafe or their office. I don't know why it happens so, but quite often when you are in a Zoom, the whispers of Zoom becomes louder, and then you can lean in and you can start to talk with people. Is this really what bothers you? Is this something that I could help with you? You can lean in and lean out, and
wow,
these things make it more personal.
Wow.
And technology is there to make things more personal.
That's more effective than you sitting around the campfire and somebody listening to somebody, and you may not be able to physically lean that close, but at least in a Zoom, you can create the same kind of environment.
Exactly. And those little things, if we teach leaders to use these things, they become 10 times more effective leaders.
Very interesting. So they definitely have to spend time and understand and work on that stuff. Wow.
Exactly.
It's a bringing that human element, what we talk about, to technology, and bringing that, whether you're working on technology, you can bring the human element into it.
Exactly. And then you can start to use new ways of using technology. And you don't need to have PowerPoint to make a point.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. So where can people find your book, and how can they connect with you? If somebody wants to work, a discussion with you, how can they connect with you? And more importantly, where can they find your book?
At the moment, my book, I'm going to take it away from Amazon and Apple Book. So because I'm writing a new version of it. So if they want to get my book, they can directly send me a message, and I send the book as an ebook for them. And it's www.jussiluukkonen.com. So it's just my first name.
I'll put a link below the video. No worries. I'll put a link there so they can click a link and they can connect with you. Okay.
And I promise that I will send an ebook to all people who want to have it.
Very interesting.
As a complimentary copy of it, because I'm writing a new version of it. So in any case, the old one I will give people as a gift.
So what's driving this new version of it, and how are you approaching it? And if you can share some a little bit details on that.
Yeah, in this book, it's digital campfires, learn, lead, leverage digital media, which means that I split it in three. One is about digital leadership. So what is this digital leadership look like, and kind of spirituality in digital world? Then another book will be a middle part of it, which is how to build the learning culture, how to use digitalization, digital transformation to build a learning culture. And the third little book is then how to become more digitally illiterate, how to read media, how to understand how everything comes together in terms of how to use different parts of media. It is kind of it's digital literacy for the rest of us who just want to. I don't want to start to create videos, but I need to understand why and how and when to use it.
Definitely. I think all those three areas you mentioned, there's a lot of help needed, a lot of awareness needed, a lot of information required. I think we need, we need to all work together and help each other understand that. And all those three areas are very, very critical, right? So, it's not, you don't have to be expert in technology. You don't need to know what the codes are written behind it, but you definitely need to use, it's like old days. We used to have, tools like a hammer and all those other tools, but, it's just a different tools these days.
Yep.
So very interesting discussion, Jussi. I definitely want to appreciate your time. I think you've been very generous. We got a little bit over, but especially on a long weekend. Thanks for spending time with me. And any message you want to leave for leaders before we go?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And well, the message is that build trust, because according to the research of Professor Jay Zak, people of high trust companies report 74% less stress and 50% higher productivity and 13% less sick days and 76% more engagement. So start building trust in your company. And the trust you can build is based on compassion, wisdom, and courage. You need to be vulnerable and open to other people. And if you realize that you are also a person who needs help, then you will shine as a leader. So I think that's my kind of
Wow, great insights. I'm definitely encourage all business leaders to get a copy of your book, connect with you and have a discussion with you. Definitely that's how we learn. And I learned so much from our discussion. There was great insights you shared. And I encourage all business leaders, my counterparts, to reach out to you. Well, listen to this discussion and reach out to you, have a conversation and see where the conversation take you. We all learn from each other. And I think you provided a great value. I think our audience probably enjoyed watching our discussion. There was so many insights that, that you shared with us today.
Thank you so much, Gurmeet.
All right,
pleasure.
Same here. Likewise. Thank you so much for your time, and hope to we talk in the future soon.
Hopefully so. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.